Hey everyone, today I have Shubham with me. So Shubham has been CEO of Recro since almost last 7 years, and Recro helps talented and skillful engineers and sort of enables them to match with the right opportunity. So hiring essentially has been a big challenge which startups face in their growth journey. So Shubham, how do you look at Recro overall? From how would you define what you are solving?
Yep. So, see, we are solving in a sense is on the uncertainty part, right? That is there in hiring. Our overall purpose is something which is much on a broader concept where we exist to basically empower people to become a better version, right, or realize the true potential.
Mhm.
But if you try to understand from the hiring perspective, what we're trying to do here is remove the uncertainty bit, right, that exists. And there is uncertainty for the candidate, and there is uncertainty in this process for the client as well.
Mhm.
So at Recruit, what we're trying to do is solve for both. From the candidate perspective, since they are the core focus for Recruit,
Mhm.
what we're trying to do is, for example, when you join an organization, right, you're not aware what kind of projects you'll be working on. Are they the right fit or not? Do they match to my competency levels?
Mhm.
Right? Are they in terms of aspirations aligned with my overall goals or not? Right.
Mhm.
So we look at these aspects, right? We understand your competency, technical competency, your aspirations, and map you to the right opportunities, right?
Mhm.
That are there, and with some of the best startups that are there in India. So in terms of candidate, he gets assured that okay, he's joining a good team where the projects and everything are good. In terms of the work quality, the kind of teams that he's working, that
Mhm.
is all taken care, and that uncertainty bit is removed. The other uncertainty arises in startups is in terms of like you have COVID, right? There is a certain segment that would be affected, right,
Mhm.
by this, and there would be layoffs, right? For example, travel and tourism, right? Last year
Right.
had heavy,
Yeah.
massive layoffs, right? Uh, at Recro, since we are so diversified in terms of domains, right? So we are working with gaming startups, we are working with healthcare startups, we are working with telemedicine startups as well,
Mhm.
insurances and others as well. So in that sense, for us, it is de-risking or like mitigating your risk tied up to a particular success failure of a startup, right? So you
Got
can
it.
probably experience the best with the best guys, and then probably you can then move on to another because it's rare that you would have all segments collapsing at one shot.
Mhm.
So that is where we try to build that sense of comfort and stability, right, while not compromising in terms of the quality of work or the kind of teams. So yeah, so this is the candidate part. For the customer part, right, where we talk about, right, what we're solving for them on the hiring perspective is
Mhm.
so Recro in a nutshell, right, is removing the uncertainty for them as well, because uh, the kind of audience that we deal with or the kind of developers that we have onboarded with us, these are not generally coming from, let's say, your tier one colleges or IITs or NIT, right?
Mhm.
These are people who are probably sitting in a tier two town, right,
Right.
having real potential, right, but does not have access, right?
Mhm.
Uh, the reason this guy does not have direct access is because you build certain recruiting biases, and you build these biases because of the capacity to, let's say, filter out, right, or to vet, right.
Mhm.
uh, for example, we have almost 50 lakh engineers right graduating in India, right.
Mhm.
Now if you're in startup which is in a growth phase, you don't have time to really, because your core focus would be, let's say, build on your metrics or your business ops, right.
Right.
uh, so you don't have that focus, right. It's not that they can't do it, but the
Mhm.
problem is you don't have that focus towards the problem, right.
Mhm.
uh, and you don't have time to do that. So the alternate way that startups take is basically shell out more money and get the guys from tier one, or otherwise they would not even, like, because at least in the high growth phase they would generally avoid or build those biases. Okay, we'll not go for someone who's not coming from a tier one or probably something like
Mhm.
that. That is where we remove that uncertainty bit, because the people are working with Recro, right? So there is no literally risk at their end, right? In terms of
Mhm.
performance, we own the entire risk at that part. So it removes and it gives them an easy access to get talent, right. Let them get involved with the teams, right. They like, they can obviously take them on their teams as well later. But initially, to get that hesitation out, right, where
Mhm.
they can risk free believe in a guy, right, which is
Mhm.
probably not coming from a pedigree which most of the guys are currently from.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is what it enables companies with, right, to get access to talent without having the risk of a wrong hire or your expectations being not matched, right?
Got it. It sounds very interesting because like even I have worked in like three startups since like last 4 years, and I have seen that a lot of time of the leadership goes in finding the right talent, and that especially becomes the difference is even more apparent, especially in engineering hiring. So yeah, this is the real pain point which startups struggle with. So would like to dig a bit deeper here. So when you onboard an engineer, sort of how do you help them figure out on what will be the right teams with whom they can work? So how do you go about that part?
Got it. So see, so I like to like frame this into an equation, right? So
Mhm.
whenever we onboard an engineer, or probably even not even onboard, I say when we start interacting or start our conversations with engineers, right? Because onboarding happens very later, right? First, you need to have that match between both, right? Between engineers and us. So we try to understand two or three things, right? So if you try to see it in three variables in this equation, right, which need to click all of three, need to click at one shot. So the first is your competency levels, right? The second is what are your interests and aspirations, right? Which is then thirdly mapped to the opportunities,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, let's say you have an competency level which right now is, let's say, of services like industry, right,
Mhm.
at this stage, right? Then let's say you have an aspiration to work at FANG, right, or probably Google,
Mhm.
like companies, right? And I give you a job at Google,
Mhm.
right? Or I give you an interview access or something like that at Google. Will
Mhm.
you be able to crack it? No,
Mhm.
right? Because you need certain amount of training or time to basically scale up, right? So if you see all of these things, right? So you need to ensure your competency level, your interests, and your opportunity
Mhm.
click at one shot. And that is where the problem is in the industry. People don't understand this equation correctly.
Mhm.
So even if you play around with one variable wrongly, for example, let's say you have, and I'll give you another example on this. Let's say we have a competency of, let's say, Google, right? I have aspiration to work at Google,
Mhm.
and you give me a services company,
Mhm.
right? Again, there will be a mismatch,
Mhm.
right? Because you have not given me what I'm
Right.
the two variables are, this is not matching, right? So all of these three have to click at one shot, and that's where Recro tries to. And for competency checking, we have our own betting rounds where we do technical interviews, and we do multiple, I think 2 to 3 rounds of technical rigorous interviews that happen. Secondly, in terms of to understand the interest variable here, right, is by a lot of this is a human element, right? So a lot of this is done through human teams, and then we have certain tools which give you insights on behaviors and interests as well, right? Based
Mhm.
on the persona of the guy and the kind of work that he wants to do,
Mhm.
right? So that is the other thing. And in terms of opportunities, that is where you again need to profile opportunities at your end, right? You need to understand, okay, this is the opportunity, to what level of competency would be required to execute this work, right? So
Mhm.
that's where you also need to get down and sit with your client and understand, right, in terms of what is the competency level expected of
Mhm.
the guy. Like, do
Mhm.
you require an architect? Do you require a services background guy? Is it a small thing, or do you require a product mindset, right? So to
Mhm.
understand that is also very important. That's the third element, which is the opportunities. The first two are controlled by Recro. Third is probably understood what client wants, right? And then
Yes.
we have to basically ensure that whenever a mapping is happening, it has to happen in the right way, right? You're
Mhm.
mapping the right competency interest to the right opportunities. So yeah, so that's how we do it. So it's a very simple equation. So you match, you click all these three variables click, you have a success, and that leads to great satisfaction at client and also at the candidate level.
Got it. So essentially, there needs to be a mutual fit around all across
Correct.
all these three parameters.
Correct.
So, would like to understand like the engineers who are working with Recro. So, do you reach out to them right out of their college, or they are working and then they sort of want to accelerate in their career growth, and then they reach out to you from their existing jobs?
See, right now we are not in the segment of, I would say, boot camps, right? Which
Mhm.
is they're solving, that's a different problem, which is the entry level hiring, right?
Right.
We are operating in a space of around 2 to 4 years, right?
Got it.
Which is predominantly about providing people who can be productive day one or can add bandwidth to your team. So if you try to understand our TG in terms of customers, right? So we have essentially most of the customers that we work with are high growth internet startups, right?
Mhm.
A lot of these people reach out to us because they need to deliver something in a quarter, right?
Mhm.
Probably do not have a lot of bandwidth to, let's say, train people right out of the college, right?
Yeah.
There are people who are doing that, right? But we are not right now, at least in that segment.
Mhm.
So we solve a different problem, right? We solve where you need an acceleration to happen, or you need extra bandwidth to augment your teams, or probably you're getting shorted and you need to release something very fast, and that is where you would need, and at that time you need people with certain amount of experience, right?
Yeah.
So that is where we look at 2 to 4, and predominantly sometimes we do go to around 1.5 years, but most of that I would say is around 2 to 4, 2 to 5 years. That is a segment that we play around.
Got it. So now coming to the client part, how do you, on what basis do you work with them? Is it based on project by project, or like for a particular time duration? That's one bit to it. And second is, who do you consider your main stakeholder on the client side? Who do you interact with most?
From the client perspective, we are working with them on different models, right? So most of them are generally, these are long-term engagements, right? These are not, let's say, something that will get wrapped up in 40 hours or 80 hours. Like, it's not a per hour billing kind of a model that we work at. These are generally minimum around 4 to 6 months of this thing. And I would say around 70 to 80% of our assignments, I would say 90% to a certain extent, last more than a year, right?
Oh, got
at
it.
that stage, right? So, but we do ask for at least 6 months of commitment, right? Because we don't want to keep the developer shifting here and there, right? Every time. Because from their perspective, also it takes certain time to get a hold of a particular culture and also the environment, right? So that is what we look out for, and what we have seen is in almost at all, like there have been cases where people have got absorbed into teams. So they have got guys from really small companies working with top end companies, and then getting absorbed there, right? So that's how it works. So essentially enabling upskilling for talent while they're working with the top companies.
Great. And on the stakeholder part, who do you primarily interact with on the client side? And how
So on
does
the client
that?
side, so mainly get a lot of requests from CTOs. We work very closely with CHROs as well, like from the talent acquisition teams as well. A lot of segment that reaches out to us is basically PMs, right? And there's been because as a PM, right, almost you're running a business within a company, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, and you know how the tech supply to demand or demand to supply ratios are screwed,
Yes.
right? So a lot of times we get a lot of requests coming in from PM, CTOs, and talent teams.
Got it. I think that's how we connected as well last year around this. Great. So now coming to like recently what has been happening since COVID, I think all teams have shifted to remote work. So how do you see this equation evolving with time, especially for engineering team? My engineering peers, when I talk to them, they are much more inclined towards remote work now. At least that's what I have seen. So since you work with a lot of developers closely, how do you see this equation?
So we've done a lot of experiments on this, right, as well. So, and we're very excited about this, to be very frank. I think a lot of companies are there which want to go remote, obviously because of the benefits that remote brings in. But there are still certain orgs which have probably, I will not say they're not comfortable, and they probably have some sort of a biases against remote yet, like even after COVID, right? So what I feel, see, it's a candidate-driven market. Right, first of all, right, you can't dictate terms, right? Number one, we have to understand this, right?
Got it.
So once you understand it's a candidate-driven market, companies do not have a choice, literally, right, in this. So that is what I'm trying to communicate, and I'm also trying to understand and basically educate other companies as well in that aspect. You don't have a choice, because what happens, so you have companies which you use to give a weekend off, right? Saturday, and then you had a bunch of companies which, let's say, would ask you to come on Saturdays, right? And these became the minority, right? Like earlier, it was norm to work on Saturdays, right? But then that became minority. That does not mean the guy does not contribute on Saturdays if there is a specific need for the company or there is a particular release coming in, right? But that decision-making power needs to be with the candidate now, right? So if you see the kind of, at least the audience that we operate with, which is, let's say, Gen Z, or you call them whatever, right? What they're looking at autonomy, right? Freedom, right? Impact of their work, right? So if you try to take away, so if they are aligned with your purpose, they would themselves come on, let's say, offers and stuff like that would happen. But if you say, no, you have to be that, you lose out on a lot of good talent. And in a candidate driven market, that will be the biggest sin that you can do, right?
Mhm.
Because you need good people to join your company, and you would not like people just leaving your company just for the fact that somebody is offering a work from home and giving you more flexibility,
Yeah.
right? So I'm seeing that trend, right? Even within our organization, there was a particular project in which we did require people to work, and the team was very adamant to do it. But what we saw, like out of 10 people we asked, within our team, almost none of them said that they were comfortable coming down. And
Mhm.
this is something where the peak was going down. It is not that talking
Mhm.
about the current times, but this is where people were traveling and things
Mhm.
were pretty much normal back. So I think it's going to be a hybrid model, right?
Mhm.
And like there would be a certain number of people who would like to change their environment, right?
Mhm.
And but again, you cannot let's say dictate terms, like in that circuit you have to come at 9 o'clock and leave at 6, right? So that wouldn't work,
Mhm.
right, for them. But yeah, obviously if you have an office, they might come in for a day or two, and that's, I think, so what Google has also done. Like we've been recently reading what they've
Mhm.
done is they're shifting into a hybrid model, and they're giving a lot of flexibility. It might be times where they might ask you to work for a month, and that is fine, right?
Mhm.
But again, like traditionally what used to happen, I don't think like you can have 9 to 6 kind of offices anymore.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty interesting analogy. Like earlier, some companies would have started with 2-day weekends and then like flexible work hours, whereas some companies would have stuck to the older models and then would have realized with time that they also need to evolve with this. So, do you think sort of essentially in things basically how they evolve in India and versus like especially in tech startups, we do compare a lot of things with how they are evolving in US. So their remote work is I think it's accelerating even faster. So do you see like this trend evolving differently in the two places or it will be along similar lines?
See, remote work has to be on similar lines, right? Because that's why it's called remote, right? So,
Hmm.
remote work will not differentiate between whether the guy is in India, Bangalore, Chennai,
Hmm.
Canada, Ontario, like whatever, right? Like it is remote, right? So,
Yeah.
distributed teams is going to be the norm, right? And I don't think like there is going to be a major difference. I think once, because what you've seen is India adapts to a lot of things that happen in US, right?
Hmm.
So and since it has already been, and you see, right, so you might have seen these patterns, right? So even let's say when Swiggy announced 4-day work week, right,
Hmm.
almost immediately a lot of bunch of companies started saying 4-day, 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 right? So
Hmm.
similar kind of a ripple effect happens, right? Once you do that in US, a lot of blue chip companies will do that in India, and then the rest will follow the suit, right? It's
Yeah.
just about who is adopting first, and so that's where you have signal giving companies, right? Like you have some stocks which give you a signal, right?
Hmm.
Similarly, you have big companies which give you a signal. For example, what Google does, what Microsoft does, what Apple does. It's not just that they are doing it, right? A lot
Hmm.
of companies, their vendors, or probably people who are actually looking up to them, start doing that at different levels, and that happens globally, not just in India. And India would be no exception in that case. So yeah, and if you see, right, in India, what is there, right? So at least in Bangalore and Hyderabad, you have almost all US startups which raise funds and
Yeah.
opening up these centers in India, right? So uh, for them also, I don't think they would have separate cultures in US and in India, right? They would try to
Hmm.
keep the policy consistent across, right? So when you have your counterpart or your friend working with a US
Hmm.
company enjoying perks, uh, why would you accept
So
the rate here, right? So
yeah, sort of adjusting for something and rather not completely comfortable with that. You would like to be in that position.
so it's going to happen. Like so people, larger companies have already done it. Companies, it's beneficial. They save a lot of money on this, right?
Hmm.
Efficiency hasn't gone down, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, for candidates, if they do need, in a sense, like they need a change of environment to work, you need to have one space, but not obviously not as large as you used to
Hmm.
earlier have, right? Just for the change of like environment and for the mental well-being, right? That needs to be there, but we're not going to see large, massive offices now.
Yeah.
At least in the software industry that we are in, like, can't talk about others.
So with COVID, like how has your business been impacted?
See, for us, it has been a boon, to be very frank, right? Because we are now able to identify and onboard even faster, right?
Hmm.
Because earlier it would require, let's say, the onboarding would require itself the guy to travel and onboarding and then accommodation and all of this, and then you get acclimatized to the new environment that you have been, right? And then you do shifting and all kind of logistical things also need to be taken care
Hmm.
of, right?
Hmm.
Now you can, let's say, identify a good person anywhere, right? And probably give him the opportunity to work from anywhere.
Yeah.
So for us, it has been a boon. To
Mhm.
be right, we have almost doubled our headcount in the last 1 year, right? And we're planning to do that this year as well. Currently, like obviously there is some I would say uncertainty again in the market,
Mhm.
right? Where people are still now a little hesitant, and this is not the right time also to like in terms of when you're looking at making a change because there's so much going on in personal lives, right?
Mhm.
But post, I think so 1 or 2 months where you think the vaccinations would pick up, right?
Mhm.
I think probably what we're looking at, I was reading about the newspaper, by December we should have enough vaccines to vaccinate the entire country, right?
Mhm.
So probably in the next 4 or 5 months, I think we would be reaching that threshold where the psychological effects of this thing would be over, right? And once
Mhm.
that is over, I think so then again there would be a huge spike, what we were seeing just a couple of months back in terms of tech hiring.
Interesting. So now coming back to the part where like you essentially onboard these engineers and then help them upscaling. And from what I have been reading and researching about Recro, you do a lot of work on community building amongst these engineers. So I see a lot of focus going on that part. So before we come to like specifics of Recro community, what is one community apart from Recro which you are very active in and sort of enjoy being part of that community?
So there is a company called Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
I have like really like the stuff that these guys are doing, right? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of very relevant content, and I've consumed a lot of content from there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Myself. So I really like that community. At least in India, is this community which is very very exciting. And then in terms of other communities that you like I really like what Kunal Shah is doing with Cred, right? The kind of
Mm-hmm.
community he's building, right? So again, that's a community. That's a model that's based on community,
Yeah.
uh, which is a community of trustable individuals, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these are some of the communities that I have been following very closely. Uh, so yeah, so in terms of does that answer your question or like?
Yeah. So essentially, what I was asking was what is something you follow closely, sort of to get inspired and then like do things in Recro community. So yeah, now coming to the Recro community you are building, like you do a lot of talks amongst the team. There are like multiple team members publishing blogs. So essentially, I believe that your idea is that each one in the team should benefit from others' learnings and grow. So how do you sort of inculcate this culture in the team?
Right. So see, essentially, what we're trying to do is here is like we have a collection of people, right, which
Mm-hmm.
have a similar set of beliefs, right, and probably some of the other beliefs are common, right. That's the reason we are all in one single company
Mm-hmm.
situation, right. Now, the community is not just about. It's easier to form, let's say, add members to the community, right. The hard part in community is how do you build engagement and add value, right.
Yes.
So when we talk about at least the team that we have built, right, which is again some sort of a community only, right? So what we
Mm-hmm.
do is unless we're providing value to this community, there's no point of just adding members to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't matter how big a community is, how engaged is your community is what matters at the initial stage, and then organically it will grow. That's what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So right now the focus is to add more and more. For example, when you talk about the internal teams, right? So we don't look at just the aspects of, for example, obviously we are doing webinars and we're doing tech talks and we're doing certain mentor talks and
Mm-hmm.
interview preps and stuff like that within to help them out.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also looking at the other aspect of the holistic living. For example, when we say we want to help people become a better version,
Mm-hmm.
by just connecting with them with the opportunities is not job done, right, for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at aspects like mental well-being. So we have tied up with your those, right, in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. Then we're looking at health. We're probably going to tie up with another vendor
Mm-hmm.
there, which can remotely help. We'll become better in terms of health, right, and
Mm-hmm.
food habits, right. And then we're looking at habit coaches, right.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have a complete engagement team internally at Recro also, which looks at multiple aspects. Like for example, for COVID also we had, for example, we have almost 20 to 50, 30 members, right, which are just doing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what that does is when you have a community to back you up, right, so you're not the only one who is fighting the battle, even in COVID, right. You have
Mm-hmm.
20, 30 people looking out for different stuff with you, right.
Right.
So that is what we're trying to achieve, and we're trying to scale this as a community. And in the longer run, the power of community is like, let's say if you want an X thing, right, you can get that at lesser cost, right. That's
Mm-hmm.
one very very small example of how
Direct
we
example.
leverage communities, right. For example, let's say you have a community of X people and you can go to an X vendor and say we'll buy that in X numbers, and
Mm-hmm.
he will give you obviously in half a cost or something like that, right. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of things that we have. We are looking at what resonate more with our audience. Like it could be learning modules, it could be certain subscriptions, it could be certain mental or health well-being packages, or something that adds to their value and help them to become better what they are at. Right? So yeah, those are kind of benefits that we are going to be inculcating over a period of time.
So, just one specific question here, that when like you will have team members who are working with different clients. So how do you enable sort of, so they'll be very occupied in the individual projects they are contributing to. So how do you sort of enable them to come back and then share this learning internally with your team?
See, again, like even how much occupied you are, it's about time management, right? In that sense, and we are asking for an hour, right? An hour in a month is not that big. In that sense, when you're contributing, and what we have seen, self-driven people want to share, right? Whenever you are happy, right, you want to probably share that with others, and you get a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment doing that, right? So whenever most of the people that come to these talks, right, they're driven, right? We don't have to force it on someone. It's only that you give them a platform to do that, right? And that in any case they would do, right? They are already looking out for sharing their learnings, or probably collaborating or reaching out to people and helping others as well, because that's a trait that is there already, right? It's not that you have to build this trait in people. You have to probably give them a platform and encourage a bit to come onto the platform, right? And that's our job, right? That's our job, to give them a way or means to, right, to so that they can achieve their end goal, right? So our job is very much limited. Give them a platform and then just tell them, okay, this is what you can do, and then it happens automatically after that.
Got it. So yeah, Shubham, apart from like we touched upon remote work, how do you go about working with clients, and then community building? But especially last 1 year has been sort of, or now it has been over a year, and it is like uh, has given exposure to a bunch of different problems which we were not worried about earlier, or were not consciously thinking about. So what has been your one learning out of this last 15 to 18 months?
The biggest learning has been that you don't need physical presence always, right? So obviously we had work from homes and all of this policy, but doing this at completely virtual. So the biggest learning has been that, okay, if you have your purpose written down well, right, and you have your team believing in your core values, and if your purpose, your mission, your values are aligned, right, then you don't need physical presence, right? And you don't need micromanagement to happen. You can trust people to do their job, right? Micromanagement doesn't help, right, in that aspect. So that has been the biggest learning, because otherwise we were very used to that physical connectivity and looking at people. Obviously, we all know that nobody works at 8 hours. Right? Even I can't. Nobody can at such work, right? But you just see that face and he's working, right? That is gone now, right? So this is the work. You have a system. They will do it. Just talk on the values. This is what is right at Recro. This does not work at Recro, right? If that is told and everybody knows what is the expectation set properly, right? And even with physical, right, I would say the expectation setting was not at this. So what has virtual taught us is right to try to communicate those values, try to communicate those what works, what doesn't, right? Very well. Otherwise, it was for granted, because you have people, you can probably communicate that upfront, right? So you take those things for granted, because that is what we have learned, that if you set the expectations correctly, if you tell them what's right, what works, what doesn't, things would happen. You don't need to tell people. And if you have to talk to a lot of time, like you have to probably go and poke and poke and poke. Probably either the guy is not at the right company, or probably you are having the wrong person at. So there's a mismatch. Yeah. The mapping hasn't happened correctly, right? So somebody needs to say bye to the other, right? So that is it. And so once you have a team which is understanding this, and then it works smoothly, right? So even if you scale, and I don't think you have people issues even in scaling.
Got it. I think that sums it up well. Like I think prior to this sort of long working from home, I would not have reached out to you, or like we could have connected virtually. I think this is like sort of open up a lot more opportunities for everyone, like to explore multiple things and work towards that. So yeah, Shubham, thank you so much for taking out time and having a chat with me.
Thanks for organizing this, Ashit. Looking forward to probably collaborate in future as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.